every situation in industrial relations or labor relations, as we call it, is very, very unique. On one hand, it's about building relationships. It's about being transparent to people. It's about communicating effectively to people in order to have harmonious relationship on the shop floor and otherwise, and equally to get the maximum possible productivity, flexibility, the right kind of quality, involvement of employees in continuous improvement, in giving innovative ideas, etc., etc. Those are some of the outcomes of good industrial relations, as I would call it. However, as we know, labor relations typically has a lot of ups and downs. There will be periods of peace where both sides, which is the management and the labor, who are like two sides of the same coin, where they work in harmony and they are, pushing forward together all these things that I talked about in terms of production, productivity, quality, flexibility, customer centricity, continuous improvement, and so on. But equally, there are periods, particularly when you're negotiating wage settlement, or there is some grievance which people have been raising, which is unreasonable according to the management, and therefore the management is not agreeing to, or somebody has indulged in an act of indiscipline and some disciplinary action has been taken. That's when the situation gets a little bit more confrontative, and those situations on one hand have to be handled in a firm way, but at the same time you have to continue, as a management, you have to continue to be fair and ensure that you are finally doing the right thing, which builds your long-term credibility. So a combination of all this, I think, makes IR both interesting and challenging. Any group of people who in a concerted manner stop work for whatever reason, that action is typically referred to as a strike. It could be with the support of a union, or it may be even without the support of the union. Typically, it will be because they have certain grievances which they have been discussing, and they have not got a satisfactory response from the management. So then, through concerted action, they try to sort of put pressure on the management and get what they want. Now, there are various forms of strikes. Strikes, if a notice has been given under the provisions of the applicable laws, and that is typically at least 14 days ahead. Or if it's an essential establishment, then the provisions for going on strike are much more stringent. If those have been followed, then the strike could be a legal strike. In most countries, including in India, there are provisions for how workmen can resort to a legal strike. But very often, these are spontaneous actions, and therefore the strike is illegal. And in case the strike is illegal, then management has certain rights in terms of taking disciplinary action, in terms of deducting wages, in terms of no work, no pay, and even penal wages for 1 day's loss of work. Up to 8 days' wages can be deducted, and so on and so forth. Various provisions are there. It's more about a combination of 3 or 4 things. Number one, I would say, is obviously the managerial and the leadership competence that you build over a period of time. But even before that, especially early in the career, it's about building functional depth in a couple of areas. Now, none of us can be experts in every area, but depending on the roles we take up, depending on the situations we are in, we have to have a couple of areas which are areas of towering strength, functionally speaking. And the earlier in our career we build that, the better it is for us. And what that is doesn't matter. For somebody it could be reward, for some time, or somebody it could be business partnership, for somebody it could be talent management, somebody it could be digital HR, and it could be one or two of these things. It doesn't have to be everything for everybody. But you have to be really interested in those areas, passionate about those areas, and considered as experts in those areas by folks. So functional competence, leadership competence, then I would say what I was talking about a little earlier, you have to build your critical experiences. There are certain experiences which teach us more than certain other experiences. So, for example, if you manage a startup, if you manage a turnaround situation, if you manage a change management initiative, these experiences teach you much more about leadership and management than what happens in the normal course. So whenever you see these situations, jump at them is what I would say. Uh, then if you get an opportunity to work outside your home country, do a staff role as well as a field role. See if you can get a cross-functional experience. These are all things which broaden your perspective, and that's what matters more and more as you sort of go up. And finally, I would say you really, whichever business you're in, especially in a function like HR, if you have to be a effective and strategic business partner, then you really need to understand the business code, as I would call it, really deep. And you have to take advantage of each of your roles to spend enough time understanding the business, how you make money in this business, what are the key elements of the business model, how can HR add value to this particular business given its business model, its market situation, its ways of working, and so on and so forth. In the early days of my career, IR was at the core of what I was doing in most of the roles I handled, because it just so happened that for almost the first 10 years of my career, I was in plant roles. And typically in plants where there were unions and large workforces, so IR and labor relations was, a big part of what I was doing and handling. And there were all kinds of situations where I had to first, as a young guy, build my relationship with unions which were strong and established for a long time, or union leaders who were bigwigs externally, and I had to sort of establish my credibility with them. And all of this initially, I think, was a lot about building my relationship one on one with different people and establishing trust. And something which, one principle which worked for me a lot is being both firm and fair. I think both these terms have a lot of meaning. Firmness is on various things, that the law of the land will prevail, that we will not tolerate any kind of indiscipline or violence or any uh, act, which is not in line with the values of the company, for example. But at the same time, fairness means one, you're treating everybody with respect. Two, that you're treating different parts of the organization, be they union, be they workmen, be they management, with equal respect. And you're treating everybody as a human being, and you're as much honoring their rights as you are establishing the right of management to manage. Garnering a variety of experiences, because if you try and do different things, if you take up different roles, if you deliberately take up more challenging projects, assignments and roles, it is more likely than not that you will face difficult situations which you will learn from. And it is typically those assignments where you're outside of your comfort zone, those sudden situations where you're pushed to the corner, that you learn the maximum and you build your resilience. Because to me, there is no alternate to experience when it comes to building resilience. We may read about it, we may, think it through in our minds, we may adopt certain techniques, but finally, it is the experience which is the greatest teacher when it comes to building resilience. First message would be, it is very important that, especially in a brick and mortar organization or even in a service organization, that you start by dealing with the front line and you understand what your front line, the people who are actually generating value for the business by making something, selling something, moving something, how do they work? What does a day in their life really look like? How is it that they add value to the business? Because finally, whatever else we do as managers and leaders and people in HR or IR is we enable that frontline work. And if we can spend enough time early in our careers taking up a role, be it a shop floor IR kind of role or even a frontline HR business partnering role in a sales organization or any other part of the organization, understanding how the frontline work is, I think, very very core to building a strong foundation for later in your careers.